These are violent criminals, so they're not going to go down easy.
ABC Tuesdays.
Let's get this done.
The Rookie is back.
We have 2 new rookies starting today.
Howdy.
Being a cop is stressful 24/7. Every year on the job is different.
And Training Day
We have a serial killer at large.
never ends.
We need an ambulance!
The Rookie. All new Tuesdays on ABC and stream on Hulu.
News team, assemble!
It's back and bigger than ever. It's the Unofficial 40 from Soonerscoop.com. Now, here's the entire Sooner Scoop crew. Carrie, Josh, Eddie, and
George. All right, welcome back. It is another edition of the Unofficial 40 podcast right here at Soonerscoop.com podcast, where we've got Josh, Eddie, George, myself, Carrie Murdoch, here to talk about all kinds of stuff going on in the world of college football and recruiting. National championship game is over, so we now move on to 2025. The coaches are out on the road recruiting. We have a coaching search going on for a defensive coordinator. A lot of stuff to get to, but we first welcome the thawed-out Josh McCuisition, who is inside as Gulf of America. Is that official yet?
Yes, I believe so.
The Gulf of America, frozen over. How's it been, Josh?
It's been weirdly, it's just been a weird few days. Like, guys, I mean, I grew up, like all of us did in Oklahoma, where you were going to get a snow or two every winter and you just get used to it. My kids have no frame of reference for this. The last time it snowed here, and it was just like a dusting, it would barely count in Oklahoma. It's 2017. And like Layla was months old. Lainey was, like 2 or 3. Lainey barely remembers it. And so it's just one of those things where you're like, it's so unusual. You have to like teach them how to like play in the snow almost. Like it's like little kids trying to learn like what they're supposed to do in snow. So like they didn't know what to do. And
but yellow don't eat it, kids.
Yeah. Oh, I literally I had to go over with it, and one of my neighbors who's a little doesn't always find my style of humor that funny. She was kind of upset that I had said it in front of some other children, but whatever. I'm doing a civic service here. But yeah, it's just funny because, like I said, I never knew anything different, and they're like, I don't know, it's like lions learning how to swim or something. Like I think lions are pretty good swimmers, so I think that's a terrible example. But what is
the ratio of just people that won't leave their houses versus stupidity where people think that they can just keep driving like they have been?
Oh no, Houston. I'm always amazed by the drivers because when these surfaces are fine, everybody does 95 miles an hour almost regardless of the speed zone. Like it doesn't matter. Everybody is flying all the time. And then you turn around and I mean, a drop of rain hits the ground and everybody's wildly cautious. It's really strange. So I had to run to the store this morning, and I mean, the roads are clear. Like there is like a patch of ice that you could maybe spin, 5 degrees on, and then your car would catch as soon as it touched cement again. Like there's nothing dangerous out there. And I was following a caravan of cars that were all doing about 20 and a 45. And I eventually just got onto a different road and went around them because I could do it no more. But yeah, again, Houston is like wildly aggressive and then wildly cautious. Like there's no middle ground ever.
Sounds like somebody that drives a big truck going faster than probably what is needed. Not protecting his fellow drivers out on the roadway is what it sounds like to me.
I didn't bump anybody off the road. I considered it, but at no point did it happen.
Some of the content coming out of I guess the Gulf and obviously Louisiana with New Orleans, people skating down Canal Street pretty cool for a town in an area of the country that doesn't get any snow to get 10 inches. There was a time lapse that I saw that somebody had it was like a foot yardstick or whatever. They set up in their backyard and they time lapsed it. It was pretty cool to watch. I like watching that kind of stuff. Some of the coverage coming out of New Orleans and Houston and even all the way over into Pensacola and the beaches in Florida and Destin and all that. It's been kind of awesome to watch.
The snow on Bourbon Street, like that looked like something out of a bad apocalypse movie. Like that's what it looked like to me. Although everybody looked really happy and having a good time, it just looked like one of those things where like proof that, cats living with dogs, like that whole kind of thing. It just looked so wild to me.
I think Florida's been where it's affected people the most, just because it's so weird to have snow in Florida.
Yeah, on the beach down in what was it? Not 30A. What's the name? Not Destin. I can't remember the name of the beach. Pensacola, and then and Gulf Shores and Alabama and all that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. It's just wild to watch people walking on the beach, but it's covered by snow. There's probably a lot of snow usually on Bourbon Street, but it's going.
Now, there have been
snowman
snowman buildings and things like that, Josh, with the girls?
Yeah, we built a snowman. We did not have a carrot, but we did have a bell pepper, so he's got a bell pepper orange nose. That was an interesting little twist on it for us. But yeah, we built one. And again, the girls are like, how do we do this? I'm like, girls, you're just making snowballs. And they're like, how do we make a snowball? Like, I mean, this is how much you have to take it back to the basics of playing in the snow. There was like, I got a snow shovel out and they thought they had fun with that for hours, just like basically dragging up and down the street, making, giant swaths in the snow. Cause I mean, guys, we got close to 3 inches at the last time I stuck a tape measure kind of in the ground and checked it. So we got a pretty good dose of snow, and that happened in like 2.5, 3 hours probably. Like it was coming pretty good there for a little while.
Have the dogs ever been in the snow?
No. Like the girls had seen snow in Oklahoma one time. We went up there to visit family for Christmas and it happened to snow. And so they had some reference. Our dogs had no idea what it was. And my girl, like, she goes out, pees, and comes right back in. She's got no interest in that. And then my boy, like, I thought he was going to roll around for a while. He was definitely digging the snow. He's fat and got a fur coat, and like he was like, yeah, this feels fantastic.
All right, yeah, it is really funny stuff looking at things like beach houses in Gulf Shores just covered in snow. All right, so we're coming off of a national championship game. Ohio State, deserved champion, just barrels through, for the most part, the college football playoff. I think most people are just like, how did that team lose to Michigan? Like, it's just unbelievable. It makes me want to go back and watch the Michigan game just to be like, how the bleep did that happen? Like,
Fielder missing or fielding, whatever his name is, missing the field goal just completely in the fourth quarter, completely turned that game upside down. But the offense, I mean, what Chip Kelly was able to get out of this offense is just unbelievable in the playoffs. It's an incredible run.
And we watched Will Howard
rebound the
State.
season.
I mean,
I'll never forget sitting there the night before OU Texas, and he throws 5 interceptions up in Stillwater 2 years ago, and all of a sudden you look up and he's making a big play to Jeremiah Smith in the fourth quarter to win a national title. It's kind of a good story. I don't know. Will Howard seems like a good guy. Happy for him, I guess. I don't really know.
I think one of the things about Ohio State to me that is a positive, for college football is that, yes, they did have some big name portal guys, but for the most part, I was a team with a lot of veterans that had been there for a while. Like, it kind of shows you that you can't really build a championship just on portal alone.
They had a good foundation, but then what they added with the 5 guys that, the Caleb Downs of the world, Quinshon Judkins, obviously Will Howard, it pushed them over the top, and that's why it was the best roster in college football, and that's why they're the national champion now.
They did a good job of retaining their key players and then adding exactly really, really great players in key areas. 100%. That's what Ohio State did.
But I mean, how much of that, guys, was blind luck? Like, Caleb Downs should not be on their roster. That was just blind, stupid ass luck. And credit to them because they paid up to get him when he was available. But you look at the portal this year, there was no one close to Caleb Downs in the portal this year. I mean, Caleb Downs, is probably one of the better safeties I've seen in college football in the last decade. Like, he is unbelievably good. And there was nobody like that in the portal this year. There wasn't even, like, I like John Mateer a lot, but, like, Cam Ward was better than anybody that was in the portal this year. Like, there's no question. Guy's going to be a top 5 pick next year.
But that was the thing. Caleb Downs, there was nobody like him, but nobody was like, oh, they got Will Howard. They're going to be really good. So
yeah,
it's like the guys they did get that had to play key positions played well.
The last thing you want to hear when you need your auto insurance most is a robot with countless irrelevant menu options. Which is why with USAA Auto Insurance, you'll get great service that is easy and reliable, all at the touch of a button. Get a quote today. Restrictions apply.
It's amazing how smart Chip Kelly starts to look when he has insane personnel. Like that's it's kind of funny how that plays.
Well, it's like nobody talked about Egbuka all year, and then you come out in that game, and he's the guy they're throwing to, play after play after play.
I can't remember who tweeted it.
Carnell Tate.
After the game, it's unbelievable to think that Egbuka's going to leave Ohio State as maybe the most decorated wide receiver to have played there from a statistical standpoint, and he was never the best wide receiver on any of the teams that he played with at Ohio State, which it probably tells you how good they've been at the wide receiver position, but it's kind of unbelievable to think.
I mean, they've just gone from one mutant to the next. Like, I mean, Marvin Harrison, you're like, oh my God, he's unbelievable. Jeremiah Smith's going to be better. Like, I mean, he just
has
is.
2 years left.
Question. And that's crazy.
Yeah, it makes you, it makes it interesting comparing. I'm thinking in my head, like, okay, the guys at OU signed in the portal this year. Like, is there anybody that's, a big impact guy like that? And George, I know you've kind of rated, who you think is going to make the biggest impact in the portal. But, I'm just trying to think. I mean, who is the number one guy in the portal for OU that's going to likely make the biggest impact?
John Mateer.
Outside
John
of Mateer. Yeah. I mean, I think that you go from Mateer, and we kind of talked about it last week, but all of a sudden you look at what Marvin Jones could bring to the defensive side of the ball and possibly a new defense coordinator via Ohio State. I sure wish if Jim Knowles were to come, he could bring Cody Simon. I thought he in the playoffs, he might have been that dominant all year. In the 3-game run that they had against Tennessee and then obviously Texas in the semifinal and the championship game against Notre Dame, I thought he's a dude. That is a fantastic football player.
I thought as much as they dominated Oregon and Jeremiah Smith was unbelievable, I thought Cody Simon was the best player in the Rose Bowl. Like, he stymied everything Dylan Gabriel tried to do with his feet. Like, he was always right there, kind of in his hip pocket. But I mean, like, you look at it, Eddie. I mean, you're not wrong. So all season long, he had a handful of double-digit tackle games, and then in the playoffs, he had 4 tackles for loss, 2 sacks. I think averaged like 10 tackles a game. I mean, a guy was everywhere.
Yeah, he was a monster.
Yeah, his playoff went 12 tackles against Tennessee, 11 tackles against Oregon. He also had the 3 tackles for loss against Oregon, 7 against Texas, and then he had 8 in the national title with the tackle for loss.
And I'm going to butcher the name, and he wasn't really healthy, but I mean, JT Tuimoloa, I mean, he was fantastic.
They were really
they're just really good. I mean,
at the end,
and that's what's exciting about Jim Knowles, as a possibility is
and what makes the Michigan
so many plague makers to play together.
Absolutely, and that's what makes the Michigan loss just that much more like I think it is half of a mental thing with Ohio State and Michigan right now. To think that I mean, we were a month removed from basically saying, all right, what's Ryan Day's next step? He's going to be basically fired at the end of the year because he can't beat Michigan. It's going to be a failure of a season. Now they're the national champions. I did see in the Cleveland Plains Dealer, I think it was, somebody wrote a column. I think it was Ben Felder or someone like that covers Ohio State. That was basically like, yeah, the national championship's great, but it's just a Band-Aid for not beating Michigan. They better beat Michigan next year, 5 years in a row, and they might end up. We might be maybe revisiting like the Ed Orgeron type of situation where he's a year removed from winning a national championship, and people are trying to run him out of town.
You write that story. That has to be a guest column. I'm sorry. You have to let a fan write that column.
It's pretty sick.
I want to ask you a
question.
question.
Stewing up in the press box, writing this big hit piece on Ryan Day the night they won the national championship.
And let me ask you this. Did Ryan Day come off any more likable after winning a national championship?
Maybe a little bit, just because he was smiling. Like, you never really see him smile. I know there were some people on the night of the game on Monday.
Happy with that cart girl.
Yeah.
One of the greatest
golf
moments ever captured on video of the girl running in the golf cart into the wall. Just an unbelievable video that's only like 15 seconds long.
Why did they just give up on it? Like those guys could have lifted that golf cart and moved it off the wall with such minimal effort.
I think she broke the axle in the front of it.
Oh, God.
Yeah, I think she like completely ruined it.
Like a $14,000 golf cart. Just broke the axle.
Let the NCAA pay for it.
Oh, God. Hey, I did want to ask, and because obviously we all just got done watching Ohio State. We know how good that defensive line was down the stretch. In the Jim Knowles conversation, does he come to Oklahoma and is there, I want to say, any drop-off to what he's going to have on his defensive line when he gets in, if he were to come to Norman?
Wow, you're way ahead of yourself.
I think that's a conversation.
Are they as good at defensive end? Because the two guys they had on their defensive end were just
badasses.
I mean, those were two big-time players.
They were, but like Sawyer was. I mean, and they were like Tumiolala, however you say it, JTT. I thought he was pretty good all year. Sawyer was a very experienced veteran. Like, would I say he was probably a notch above like what we all got used to seeing from like Ethan Downs?
Yep.
Yeah, he's a notch above that, but he wasn't special until the playoffs. And then that Michigan thing. Thank God he got to have these playoffs, because if that was the last thing people remembered him for, that would have been a brutal existence, just the way that went down. And I'm happy for the guy. I mean, clearly cares a lot about Ohio State and all that sort of stuff, so good for him. But I will say, I think they're clearly better inside than Ohio State is, with Halton, Dominic Williams, Jaden Jackson. And I like Tyleik Williams. I like the Hamilton guy. Like, they've got players. I'm not saying they don't. But OU at defensive tackle right now can just come at you in waves. And then if you throw in R. Mason Thomas, obviously I think a better pure pass rusher than either of the Ohio State guys we're talking about. It's just, what do you have at that other end? Like, I think that's really, to me, that's the question mark.
Yeah, coming at waves I think is a little strong. I mean, they've got 4 guys. I mean, and probably 3 elite guys, potentially elite guys. Jaden and Halton is a pass, rusher from the middle. Mm-hmm. And then I don't know that I really. I mean, David Snow's still to be determined. The Stone. Yeah. I'll take this over the last one.
Oh yeah. I mean, we just totally skipped over Kerry forgetting to hit record. We were 25 minutes.
Can I call? I was going to call myself out on that. All right, but I'm glad that you could do that, George. I'm not helping you with your watch stuff anymore. George is like texting me watches last night. He's deep into it right now.
I'm looking at him right now.
Oh no.
I'll speak for everybody when we say nobody cares.
We do
That's
need to.
a single guy's game, George. You don't get to play in that.
Well, this is.
It's a wedding. It's the wedding watch, apparently.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, I was approached at the wedding I was at this weekend by Scoopers, who said, "Man, love the watch talk," and they wanted to see the Daytona.
Were you wearing it?
Yes, I was.
There you go.
No, it's like everything else. Appreciate Josh. I got to meet several. Here's how the wedding went. People were bringing their wives up to me saying, "This is one of the guys that I force you to listen to in the car." And some of the wives were like, you could tell they were like, "Oh, it's great to meet you. Love listening." Other wives were like, "Yeah, this is it, huh?" And they slowly couldn't wait to get away from me.
That should probably be a Scoop shirt, like the show that your wife will passively listen to.
It's a thing. It definitely has become a thing. All right, Jim Knowles, and before we do that, let's say this. Obviously there's a vision here that came together that out of mutual interest because of Jim Knowles' private life situation. He's getting married to someone from Oklahoma who has kids in a state that are still, one's at least high school age, and I hate getting into that too deeply, but obviously there's a vision there that if he ends up coming to Oklahoma, it will be very good for the Sooners, just like it would be very good for you to go check out our friends at Enjoy Vision because they have a vision for your eyesight.
New Year, Sooner fans, and that means new opportunities to win championships, hopefully get back on track. And thanks to Enjoy Vision, they're saving you $1,000 on LASIK glasses and contacts. That's very, very last season, and it's also for pores. It's time to see every play, every highlight with crystal clear vision. All you got to do is schedule your free consultation with the good people at Enjoy. And go to enjoyvision.com. That is the letter NJOY vision.com and start the new year with a fresh perspective and keep an extra $1,000 in your pocket and then donate it to NIL. Enjoy Vision. This is where Sooner Scoop LASIKs.
And where Eddie Radosevich is able to read small print like the Around the Corner show that we started last week.
I'm able to read it. We just need to move one of these screens so I can actually see the lettering.
Yeah,
or the words.
We'll get that taken care of.
We had a lot of fun doing that, and I'm sure that we're going to be answering some questions about Jim Knowles coming up this week.
Yeah, I've actually started perusing the boards this morning a little bit, just looking for our next victims, if you will. And by the way, this is not like a you come on the show. Like, I think a lot of people are mistaken, like, oh, have me on. It's like, we're not looking to have you on. We're looking to kind of make fun of your post on the message board or answer good questions, which a lot of questions coming in right now about Jim Knowles, what the latest is. George, I'll just hand it over to you first because, you and I kind of tag team this thing, trying to get information. Sometimes you get a little morsel that helps me get a little morsel. I'll get something that helps you get something. We check with our national people, but this is one of those deals. And let me preface this before throwing it to George. We've said it from the beginning. This is just a possibility. This is just they're taking a shot at something because of mutual interest. It's never been we have to go get Jim Knowles or we're screwed. It's really just something that came out of thin air. They have been examining. I do think it's something that Brent Venables is now fully behind and would like to make happen if at all possible. And I do think that the money people are fully behind this, would like to make it possible. The administration, and I think from the very beginning, everybody scoffed and deservedly so. I mean, you guys scoffed at me. People scoffed at us. They made little 9-minute YouTube videos just about us and how stupid we were for even bringing this up or buying into it. I think a lot of the Ohio State media is just, and I get it. Like, it seems ridiculous. But here we are, and George, 2 days into really, after the game is over, waiting to find out where things stand with Jim Knowles. Where would you say we are right now?
I would say we're still... I think it's starting to progress kind of quickly, and we could know here in the next couple of days, but this is still somewhat preliminary. Like, we don't know for certain if there's even been a contract, written. Presented. Maybe there's been a verbal offer of like, hey, we're thinking about, this amount of money. I think that's probably been somewhat discussed, and I do think that Oklahoma's prepared to pay a lot of money. How much? I don't know. But I do think that they'll be in that range of making him, one of, if not the highest paid assistants in college football. And I think that the thing that we don't know and where this has kind of gone off the rails is, when we reported a couple weeks ago, it was just, kicking the tires kind of, maybe Knowles reached out to Oklahoma. There's some mutual interest, all of that. And now it's turned into people saying it's a done deal. Knowles wants to go to Oklahoma. We don't know that. Like, all this smoke and everything that's come out so far, it feels like it's come from OU side of like, yeah, they're interested, and Knowles might have some mutual interest because of his personal situation and all that. But I don't know, what Jim Knowles is thinking. I have no idea how serious he is about this, and does he really want to come to Oklahoma where maybe the situation isn't as stable, and you just won a national championship, you're getting paid a lot of money, you're probably going to get paid more money by Ohio State. Like, make no mistake about it, Oklahoma is going to make a great offer to Jim Knowles. I fully expect Ohio State to match it. I don't think that's crazy to say. So, that's the part that's kind of unknown, and where this whole thing's kind of taken a life of its own is people have been saying it's a done deal one way or the other, and that's just not true. Like, this thing is still in the early stages. Now it could rapidly pick up, and I think maybe today it sounds like, admins getting together today and having some meetings, and maybe some BMDs are meeting. So we'll see if that heats up the process. But I think the one thing that needs to be said is, like Carey said, this is just a possibility, and it's not. Obviously, it'd be great if Oklahoma could get Jim Knowles. It'd be huge. But it 2 weeks ago, this wasn't even something that was being discussed, and so I don't think it would be like this. It shouldn't be viewed as if Jim Knowles ends up staying at Ohio State, it's not because of Oklahoma doing something wrong.
Yeah, it's a Hail Mary. I mean, it really is, and if it works, man, that would be huge for Oklahoma, and man, that would be huge for Brent Venables, because Josh, as we talked about on the now never recorded pod, this is something that doesn't just benefit OU from a coaching standpoint; it benefits every aspect of the program. I mean, it helps free Brent up to be a head coach. It gives you another good recruiter, a guy that has this is something I was talking about this morning. Like, they think the NIL area is all about who's going to pay the most money. OU, they've won battles with people, and it wasn't just about the most money that they were offered. Players and prospects, they still believe in development. They still want to get to the NFL. They still know that's the ultimate goal. And if you have a Brent Venables and a Jim Knowles in your coaching room, that's a hell of a lot of guys that have put people in the NFL and know how to do that. And the other thing is, like George brought this up earlier, if things don't work well with Brent, the next coach comes in, who is not going to want to keep Jim Knowles as their defensive coordinator? I mean, can you imagine if going back to and it wasn't set up this way, so it could never have happened, but imagine you hired a Lincoln Riley off the street today, or the equivalent of Lincoln Riley, and you said, hey, you've got Jim Knowles as your defensive coordinator. You can go out and find the best offensive mind in college football or NFL, whatever. Give him the head coaching job. Build this support around him that they're doing now, and you're almost guaranteed to have a ready-to-go SEC defense from day one.
¿Hablas español?
Sprichst du Deutsch?
Kan du norsk?
If you've heard that sound from Babbel before, I bet you do. Babbel is the science-backed language learning app that actually works. With quick 10-minute lessons handcrafted by over 200 language experts, Babbel gets you on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. With over 16 million subscriptions sold and a 20-day money-back guarantee, just start speaking another language with Babbel. Right now, up to 55% off your Babbel subscription at babbel.com/Spotify podcast. Spelled BABBEL.com/Spotify podcast. Rules and restrictions may apply.
Yeah, because, Carey, somebody asked me yesterday in the board chat, like, how much better could this make the defense? I don't think it's a huge deal. Like, Brent Venables, we all know, is a very, very capable defensive coordinator. If you want to argue you like Knowles' scheme a little better, or, he's more engaged every day, so he can do that, okay, fine. But, like, if you want to do it by percentage, I'm talking maybe 5%. Maybe they're 5% better than they would be otherwise. But I think what I like about the possibility of this is we know that OU isn't going to pay this guy the money they're going to pay him, and Brent isn't going to bring him in if he's not a guy that he says, you know what, you're the defensive coordinator, you run this show. Jim Knowles has the respect to be able to do that, and Brent really can be the head coach and just do all that requires, all of that entails, from fundraising to all the other stuff that he's got to do that has nothing to do with football coaching. The other thing I like about it, and being the recruiting guy, this won't surprise anybody, Brent Venables is an outstanding recruiter. You get him in living rooms and getting him talking to mom and dad, like, they react to him in a huge way. And we can talk about NIL and all this other stuff. You're right, Carey. He still has a ton of credibility, and he's incredibly likable. Like, he gets into recruiting visits and these in-homes and all these other things. People respond to Brent very easily. And from the Jim Knowles side of things, Jim Knowles has recruited Texas very well for Ohio State. Just last year signed Riley Pettyjohn, one of the better linebackers in Texas, one of the better linebackers in the country, out of McKinney in the Dallas area. A couple of years ago, kind of shocked people and got Peyton Pierce away from Oklahoma out of Lovejoy. So there's a lot of track record where he's not just a guy that, okay, he's recruited New Jersey, and how well is that going to do for Oklahoma? He's recruited the areas that Oklahoma recruits. So, guys, there's a reason we never would have thought of this, because it shouldn't be possible. It shouldn't be able to work, but it seems like there's a chance, and that's just crazy to believe. But this really could be almost unfairly good for Oklahoma.
And I think, too, that one of the things that I mentioned earlier on the other show, but like if Brent Venables, and this is my opinion, if Brent Venables is going to be a successful head coach at the University of Oklahoma in the long term, he's eventually going to have to hand the reins off defensively, and he's going to have to become the CEO head coach. Look at what Ryan Day and Marcus Freeman have done, in their careers. Marcus Freeman's great defensive mind, right? He handed it off to Al Golden. That doesn't mean that Marcus Freeman doesn't have a say in what they're doing, right, defensively, but Al Golden is the one calling the defense. He's running the show. He's coming up with the game plan. Ryan Day, for a long time, called plays offensively for Ohio State, and I do think it's a little different when you're an offensive head coach if you're calling plays, but he handed off to Chip Kelly, and look what they did this year. And I just think that, Kirby Smart, Nick Saban, like the great coaches have often handed it off at some point. And that's not to say, he could hand it off to Jim Knowles and the thing could still be a disaster next year. I don't know. But I think if you want to get the most out of Brent Venables as a head coach, this would be a home run hire. And that's why he's worth whatever the money is. And I think it's an important point, Kerry. You brought it up in the other show as well. About
One Oklahoma is not funding this. So it's like don't worry about, if you have to pay Jim Knowles more money, it's not coming out of any kind of bucket for NIL. It's coming from the big money donors that are behind this. Are like, hell yeah, we'll pay more money because this is a great situation for our football program. So look, the whole thing with NIL, and I've said this, and some of my frustrations are, you have to motivate this donor base to give. You have to give them hope, and I think that's one thing Brent can be better at. If he becomes a head coach and you bring in Jim Knowles, he can go out there and shake the money tree a little bit. He can tell. You put Brent Venables in front of a room with people that have six-figure incomes, he's going to come away with a lot of money. That's just Brent. He's great at speaking to people. So, don't worry about how it's going to hurt NIL if you're going to pay Jim Knowles all this money. It's not.
And Kerry, it's important too, because I heard some people talking about this the other day, that they're like, well, why would Oklahoma tie themselves to that if they're just going to have to fire everybody after next season if it goes wrong? That's just not true. If you hire Jim Knowles and you sign him to a 3 or 4 year contract and he's making a ton of money, one, like you said earlier, the next head coach that's at Oklahoma likely will want to keep Jim Knowles. Right? You'd probably want to keep the best defensive coordinator, and he's going to maybe want to stay. And two, if he doesn't want to stay, someone else is going to hire him. So they're going to have to pay that buyout to get him to leave. Like, Oklahoma's not going to fire him, and the only way they're tied to that money is if Jim Knowles, I just want to sit out a year and not coach. And I just don't think that's going to happen. I also think something...
Not at 59.
Something that we haven't talked about, I don't know if others have talked about this, but what if Jim Knowles also wants to get back to Oklahoma because he could be up for the Oklahoma State job in a year or two?
That's an interesting point.
I don't think that's a crazy idea. And I don't know. The personal stuff I don't like to get into because I just don't know enough about it.
Yeah.
That's clearly a huge factor in all of this. But I also think that OU is putting together a very good offer, and I understand that maybe the job isn't quote unquote as stable or as good of a job as maybe Ohio State is right now, but it does sound like Oklahoma is ponying up for this.
If the money's right, I do think it also is important to kind of separate fact from fiction, just in terms of schematically what Jim Knowles wants to do. Would that line up with what Brent Venables wants to do? I know that there's been some talk that they run completely different defenses. To an extent, I think the base is the same, and I don't think it would be that big of a deal. Would that be accurate?
Yeah, the personnel and the base scheme 4-2-5, like that's what Jim Knowles runs. That's what Brent Venables runs. They could make that work very easily now. The language and how many times they blitz a game and things like that can obviously be different. Obviously, their cheetah's called a star, and vice versa. But I feel like there's this narrative that like Jim Knowles is running this completely different defense, and that's just not true, right, Josh?
Yeah, I mean, again, from to keep it as simple as it can be, from a personnel standpoint, you're just changing terminology. Like George is saying, that they call a cheetah a star, and that's, to me, that's the greatest question of this whole thing. And I hate to say it, but like we talked about, there is this conversation of who learns new terminology. If Jim Knowles comes to Oklahoma, they do a lot of similar stuff. They're gonna just have different words for it. Like, this is what Jim Knowles calls it. This is what Brent Venables and his coaching tree calls it. Like, how do we determine what do we do? I'm gonna guess Jim Knowles is gonna learn new terminology. That just makes sense to me, rather than trying to teach your linebackers, your corners, your safeties, all these new names for the same calls. Just have them do it differently. Now, again, there are differences in their defense. I think the way that that Jim Knowles will use his front four can be a little more varied than Oklahoma. Like, they really like to stand up JTT a lot. He'll do a lot of that. You saw that, honestly, a lot in that very first drive against Notre Dame. He had his hand up a lot. So there's some element of that that's a little different from Ohio State to Oklahoma. But from just a personnel grouping, it's very similar. You're not going to have we don't really have a body type. Like when Brent arrived, you had to play Deshaun White at Cheetah because you didn't have any reasonable fit for that from what Oklahoma had, returning in their personnel. Oklahoma's personnel is going to fit him just fine. Like there's no problem there. And guys, I mean, we forget, if this were to happen, Kendall Daniels spent a little time with Jim Knowles. So there is already some, he's going to have some familiarity with that scheme. And of course, that's 4 years ago. So it's not a huge deal, but there are things that make it even a little more, easy to integrate.
All right. And again, I think it's important to say, we've been critical of people trying to advance this, further than it has gone. And important to reiterate what George said earlier. This is a day-to-day where I think we'll find out the seriousness of it on Jim Knowles' side, if it's more than just mutual interest. So we're kind of guilty ourselves of advancing this just here on the podcast, talking about the possibilities. But at the same time, we don't know where this is going to go. And like George said, the next couple of days is going to be critical. I don't know that today would be a day that we'll find out that he's accepted it. But I do think, it could be a day, George, in my opinion, where we find out, okay, this just never reached the point of being that serious.
Yeah, or that Jim Knowles was using this as leverage. I don't think that's a crazy idea that's what's happening here. I don't think that's what's happening, but you have to just also know that Ohio State's gonna, whatever OU offers, OU could offer, $10 million. Ohio State's gonna counter. I fully believe that whatever,
coming off a national championship, they're not going to want to lose their defensive coordinator.
No, and so I don't think that. If I were fans or whatever, I just don't get your hopes up. Just kind of, it's tough to say that when we just talked about all the great things that Jim Knowles would bring, and really that
don't do any of that. Get your hopes up. Shoot for the sky. You can't.
But I do think that
shoot for the moon, you're going to hit some stars.
One thing we haven't talked about is the optics of it, more so than he could call unbelievable defense next year. The optics of this would be incredible for Oklahoma too.
I believe that's the one. Go back to Adrian Peterson. He always tried to make that analogy. I believe the analogy is shoot for the moon, and if you don't make it, you'll still be among the stars.
That's what I said.
It's not what you said.
It's 100% what I said.
Anyway. We got a lot of recruiting stuff to talk about, but I also want to tell you guys, obviously, it's a new year here. By the way, happy birthday to my mom today.
Oh.
January 22nd. I don't believe you guys have ever met my mom.
Yeah, we have.
You have?
Multiple times. I've broken bread with them multiple times.
You forgot to mention that on the last pod.
Mention what?
Your mom's birthday.
It's today.
I know. Well, you didn't mention it on the last one, so maybe you forgot originally.
You mean the pod that never...
The lost pod.
Yeah, okay. Glad you keep bringing that up, George. It's your fault for not asking me if I was recording before we start.
I know. I typically do. Yeah.
So this is much.
It is my
you've
fault.
admitted
Yeah,
it's
you're
as
right,
much
you're
your
right.
fault as it is mine.
It's just our time.
It's the start of a new year, January 22nd. Happy birthday, Mom. Now, whether you're looking to shed a few pounds, or you just want to feel better overall, Cody Drug has you covered. Our guy Will at Cody Drug in Sulphur Springs. Here's the great thing. He can basically be your Amazon. He can overnight a custom GLP-1 weight loss medication to Oklahoma or somewhere in the Dallas area as well, Texas, wherever you are. If you can't get out to the store because you're in a snowstorm in the Gulf of America, Cody Drug can overnight you some GLP-1 weight loss medications. They have the state-of-the-art sterile lab, and if you're not sure what supplements you need, reach out online for a consultation, and they'll guide you on the types and amounts of supplements tailored to your individual needs. If you go to Cody Drug, I believe it's Cody Drug RX on Instagram. Yeah, Cody Drug RX. Will does a whole bunch of videos talking about the different supplements that they do and how they will help you. But yeah, mainly get with your doctor. And when you tell him where you want your prescription to come from, tell him Cody Drug. And like I said, they'll get you a custom GLP-1 weight loss medication overnighted. Also, from weight loss to wellness, Cody Drug specializes in helping you feel better. Visit CodyDrugRx.com to get started, and they can even have some telehealth sessions with you as well to help you out as well. So one of the best known, most respected drug stores in the area, most popular pharmacies in Texas, over 200,000 Instagram followers, dwarfing any of us, including Eddie Radosevich. So CodyDrugRx.com. Go check him out. Also, you'll see a big Sooner Schooner in the background of a lot of his videos on Instagram.
Shout out Will. He was one of the people that was pardoned by President Trump on Monday. It's pretty cool.
I didn't know he was in prison. I've seen him a lot.
I'm just kidding. He did go up to the inauguration stuff, though. It looked pretty fun.
I didn't see it. I didn't see any of it. I'm not trying to get Eddie on a tangent here, but I was just too busy with
Carrie
all
Underwood.
the other stuff. I saw the Carrie Underwood
Pride
stuff.
of
Killed it. The music wasn't working. She just went a cappella. It was great. It was a great moment for Shakota.
Okay.
Probably only second to Elijah Thomas winning the Heisman Trophy. Where'd you think I was going?
I don't know.
That's going to be the number one Shakota.
We never know with
Shakota
you,
moment.
Eddie.
That's going to be the number one Shakota moment, and her singing at the inauguration for 47 was going to be number two.
Before we get into recruiting, George, is the wedding fully planned? Because you guys are like a rocket ship into getting this thing planned.
We're doing great. She's leading the charge. She's the captain of the ship, and
Josh said that he's gonna go ahead and take care of the Emerald City for your band.
Boy, I think that would put Sooner Scoop out of business for that.
I saw him this weekend. It was a show.
Was it them?
I think it was. It had to be them.
They're awesome.
They didn't have the Pitbull looking guy,
one of the best
though.
wedding bands of all time. It truly is.
I'm going to tell my kids that was Emerald City. I'm never going to have kids, but, that's the thing people say. No, you guys are killing it with the wedding planning.
Yeah.
Just figure out your watch.
We sent out the save the dates today, so all the
Didn't you force us all to RSVP already?
Nope.
Yeah, that was
not to
that was
RSVP.
To get
that was just to get your address.
To get the addresses, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
That was pretty smart, George. That was something I was like, God, I wish we'd have had that in our time. Like we had to phone contact everybody. That was not great.
Yeah, it made it super easy. I will say we saved some money because Aaron decided to handwrite the letters, the addresses on all the letters. So
calligraphy.
She just wrote.
She just has her beautiful penmanship.
Yeah, I wouldn't say beautiful, but it's good.
Oh wow!
I think all girls have really good handwriting.
Ooh. Yeah. I mean, beautiful. I mean,
was it hard to just say yes? She has beautiful penmanship.
No, she'll know.
You had to be critical.
I'm not being critical.
It's all beautiful all the time right now, buddy. Until you hit that finish line, just steer clear of
It's
the danger,
really good.
the rocky shore.
It's really good handwriting.
Okay.
Much better than mine.
Was I saw something the other day, Josh?
Yes.
When you and your wife are debating a subject, anytime that you think you're right, you're not right, but anytime that you're both wrong, you're the one that's wrong. Even if you're both right, she's right. But if you're both wrong, you're wrong.
And I know in George's head right now, he's like rolling his eyes like, that's the dumbest shit I've ever heard. Like, I know it. And I was there 15 years ago, George. Like, I hear you. Like, I know where you're coming from, and it's okay. I thought all the same stuff. It's just easier. But I remember, and George, you can tell me, like, if there's certainly do it off air. But I remember when we were getting married, Tiffany being like, what do you think about this? Like, and would want my opinion. And the second I gave my opinion, it didn't matter what I'd said. She was going to do whatever she wanted to do with the wedding anyway, which I don't give a flying shit about. I never cared. Like, whatever. You want me to wear a pink tuxedo? Cool. I'm in. Let me know where to be. And that was like my first moment. I was like, I don't need to be here for any of this. I just need to know what time to show up. And like everything else, she'll handle.
Yes. Just support. That's what I'm here to support and do.
Criticize penmanship.
And but she'll agree with me on that, by the way. But I am just there to help wherever I can. But everything so far has been pretty easy. Well, not easy, but like collaborative and figuring stuff out. Getting everybody's address was just kind of a pain in the butt, and then coming up with the guest list and things like that. The venue, though, we had a good idea where we wanted to do that, and DJ and everything has not been too bad. It's been fun.
And we should say, congratulations, because everything's sped up with the expecting. Have we made that announcement yet? Which I think is awesome.
We're just not expecting anything.
Kidding to the Stoya family. I look forward to it. It's going to be a lot of fun.
What's that song about shotgun weddings, Georgia Satellites? I think.
I don't know that.
I only know one Georgia Satellite song.
That's a band.
And that's the one about a shotgun wedding. Yeah. Anyway, it's going to be fun too when we award certain scoopers, access to your wedding.
That will not be happening. Grimlock, you are not.
Grimlock is coming.
Grimlock, you are not invited.
Grimlock's got to come.
No.
Grimlock, you can crash it. It's okay.
No, you can't. We'll have security.
All right. So Junior Day is coming up, but Coach is out on the road right now. Josh, I know Brent Venables and a lot of guys were out at IMG yesterday. Is IMG? Are we dipping back into the IMG talent pool at Oklahoma?
They are. And again, I mean, for all of the talk, IMG's actually been pretty good to Oklahoma. You look at all the way back to Buki and TJ Pledger, David Stone, Jaden Jackson. I mean, they've had some success there. Now, not, usually it's a situation like David Stone where they kind of had a connection or they were in on the guy before he got to IMG, but that's not always the case. This time they're down there seeing Jake Krull, linebacker, a defensive end. Same deal. It was a guy they were recruiting. I believe he was at Jones in Orlando, if I remember correctly. And went to IMG over the last year and is a guy that really has connected with Miguel Chavis. They really have a good feel. He talks about just liking, all the things you would expect about Miguel Chavis, his energy, his enthusiasm, like all the stuff that we know Miguel, I think, sleeps like coaching. Like I think that's just the way he's wired. But he really likes them. I don't think he's going to be up for any of the junior days, but I do expect him to come up for probably a spring practice or something along those lines. So I thought it was really telling that they really rolled out the red carpet to go see him, yesterday with Brent Venables, Todd. I don't think Todd was at that one. I know Miguel Chavis was. I know J.P. Lossman. And for those who have asked me, J.P. Lossman's just filling in the hole for Zach Alley right now. They've used him. And I know, former quarterback, whatever. That's not really the point. J.P. does a lot of on-campus recruiting for Oklahoma. He's really good. Parents really like him. So he's kind of out, just kind of being that 10th man on the road for them right now. And like I said, I've never heard anything but good reviews of him. So it seems like a really smart choice for Oklahoma.
Now, I guess let's start with your old stomping grounds, Putnam City, because there was a visit by Brandon Hall, and I can't remember the kid's name.
DJ Ackerson.
DJ Ackerson, but a guy that you think could be on the verge of getting an OU offer.
Yeah, guys, I mean, this was a guy that Oklahoma really didn't know about like a week ago. Like, as we're recording this on Wednesday, I would say last Wednesday, maybe they were just kind of taking their first looks at him, but quickly, got in contact with him, the coaching staff there. For those that will remember, the head coach now at Putnam City is Willis Alexander, the guy that was at Douglas for, years and had a ton of success. Then obviously Brandon Hall goes by on Tuesday to see him, and he'll be up at Oklahoma's Junior Day. And right now is the only guy I have on their Junior Day list this weekend. I think that's about 20 guys deep that I've got confirmed right now. The only one that doesn't have an offer. To me, that tells you something. I think that, and the fact that they didn't do it yesterday, and the fact he's still coming in this weekend, I think they're trying to make that a moment. He's probably going to come into Brent Venable's office like that. And again, that's me guessing. I don't want to say like that's fact, and I know that for sure, but it just makes a lot of sense. So that would be my anticipation. Now he talked. I've got some stuff in Woke this morning where he talked about he and Brandon Hall getting to have a conversation about kind of what they want to see him at as a senior, like weight, like what they kind of plan to play him as. And I thought that was all pretty interesting because, again, this is a guy, the first time I saw him was playing like corner safety for Putnam City, in the spring of, I guess that'd have been 23. And now, he's in the linebacker cheetah conversation for Oklahoma. So you're talking about a really good athlete who's just gotten bigger and kind of grown into a different position.
Jaden O'Neal, Caden Jones, those are, the kind of the, I guess, names that people know around these parts in terms of Junior Day coming up this weekend. You put together a current list of visitors that are expected in this weekend. Anybody that currently holds an offer that maybe you think about, would he commit over the course of the weekend if things went right for Oklahoma's Junior Day coming up?
I think people's mind immediately goes to Caden, obviously, just because of the, as well as Oklahoma's recruited Jinx and, obviously his father, Kewan, being a legacy guy. But I would say if there was a guy I was kind of watching, it might be Jaden Warren, the wide receiver from here in the Houston area, guy from Iowa Colony. Really had a huge junior season. Iowa Colony's a fairly new school in the Houston area, kind of in that same Manville, down in that kind of southwest corner of the Houston area. And really, they've come on as a program, and he really had a huge year. And so it's from what I've gathered, he has really climbed the board for Oklahoma, has become a guy they really are high on. And there's some other guys that I think maybe I feel more certain end up as part of Oklahoma's class. But the other thing to remember with Jaden Warren is his sister is a student at Oklahoma. So there is some connection there. Kind of reminds you of a couple of years ago with the kid that ended up going to Clemson, whose name I'm just going to blank on, the big receiver.
God,
had a great freshman year.
I could see his face. I could see his face.
Yes.
Damn it.
Mike.
We're going to have to look this up. Brian Wesco. God bless.
Yeah, couldn't get there. So kind of the same deal, where Brian's sister was on the soccer team. We still don't know what happens if OU doesn't fire the soccer coach. Like that kind of triggered a chain reaction. But he would be one of the guys I would watch. But again, it's a really good group. You've got several offensive linemen coming in. Same on the defensive line. They've got a big guy from Pennsylvania, Tavian Branch. Camarion Johnson, a kid from Alabama that's coming in. But maybe the one that I think people are just sleeping on a lot is Kevin Ford from Duncanville, guys. Like, all I hear is that he and his family love Miguel Chavis. They are completely bought in on Oklahoma. And if Oklahoma can show them that thing I always talk about, that proof of concept that this is on the right track, I think Oklahoma's got a really, really good chance to pull off something they haven't done very often, and that's a big win at Duncanville.
It's a school I feel like in the 11, 12 years I've been working here that Oklahoma can just never – they always get their foot in the door, but they can't stay long at Duncanville, one of the powerhouses in the state of Texas.
It is. I mean, and that's just, a lot of people say, there's a problem with the staff. Guys, that's the staff that used to be at Skyline, where Oklahoma landed, Cordy Nelson, Joe Powell. You go down the list, they got guys out of Skyline all the time. And so I don't think it has anything to do with any problem with Samples and that crew. And Brent Venables has known Reginald Samples and his staff for, decades now. So I just don't think that's it at all. And we know how well connected Emmett Jones is to all those people as well. So I think it's just, maybe the right guy at the right time. And there's been some bad luck, like the Caden Durham thing. They probably get him if Taylor Tatum doesn't jump on board first. So there's a lot of different stuff that kind of in play there.
Is there a reality with Braden Presley that they could steal him away out of Bixby with his connections back into obviously Stillwater with his brothers? Brennan obviously at OSU, and now the other kid at Tulsa.
Braylon.
Yeah, gosh, I always get those three mixed up.
Braylon, Braden, and Brennan. I mean, like that seems pretty fair there. God, about called you Carey for the name, but here we go. But yeah, with Braden Presley, I think there is a chance. And I think it's aided by the guy you're talking about there, Eddie, where Braylon went to Oklahoma State, was there for, I believe, a year, and then transferred back out and back home to Tulsa. You've got to think that breaks some of that mystique a little bit. Like, yeah, it didn't work out for me at Oklahoma State, that kind of thing. And I will say, for those that are like, Brennan's been really good, but he's a little smaller, and Braylon's been really good, but he's a little smaller. Braden's not that guy. Braden's a big guy, Eddie. I know you saw him, later in the year there. This is a Presley guy that's got a lot of size to him. He's a bigger DB. I think Oklahoma really likes him. So there is there's a lot of ways this makes sense to me, and I could absolutely see this being a fit and kind of a real possibility, because I think Oklahoma has been very gung-ho with him. It hasn't been like, let's see what he says and that kind of deal. They've been, all in on him since early on.
Obviously, there's going to be a lot of talk about Jaden O'Neal's return to Norwood this weekend. It seems like here over the course of the last month, he made the stop in San Antonio at the Navy All-American Game Combine. It seems like his star just continues to grow a little bit, maybe even more better than we thought, and we thought he was pretty damn good. Obviously, a lot of that has to do with his junior tape, not being out because, Narbonne had the situation in Los Angeles, obviously, with the forfeiture of games within their division. But it seems like Jaden O'Neal's had a pretty good offseason so far.
Yeah, I mean, he really has, because, he followed up the Navy Combine, went down to Florida for the I can't remember the one of the big national 7-on-7 events that I always forget the name of.
I think it is the Battle Series.
And was quarterbacking for the South Florida Express, which, again, tells you all you need to know about the chaos of 7-on-7. But really looked good and connected with a guy that is coming in this weekend that a lot of people weren't talking about with Oklahoma. And frankly, I'm not going to say, I'm not putting that on anybody else. Like, I wasn't overly aware of he and OU being serious, and that's Jabari Brady, the wide receiver, top 100 guy from Fort Lauderdale. Kind of another big outside type of guy, kind of the guys we've seen Oklahoma pursuing here over the, in the portal and over the last year or so in recruiting. But those two had a connection. And again, I can't talk enough about how open Jaden O'Neal and Caden Jones have been about their friendship and their connection. And I think for all the visits they've both taken to Oklahoma, this may be only the second time maybe when they were both on campus at the same time. Like, it just seemed like they were always at odds, and you were kind of like, well, Jaden, why don't you just wait and make the trip when Caden, wait and make the trip down, 44 when Jaden's going to show up in town. But it just hasn't worked out that way. And even this summer at camp, when Jaden came and worked out, he was there in the afternoon, but Caden was there in the morning and had to leave to get back to Jinx for something. So it's just been funny how that has worked. But again, I think Jaden O'Neal, and we had him on when he committed. He's a really engaging kid that I think will do a good job as a recruiter. He's a guy that I think players seem to like because he walks that line of recruiting but not like beating guys over the head about you got to come to OU kind of thing.
Junior Day, well, first off, let me ask you this. Sooners coaches, a lot of time in Georgia yesterday visiting guys. Is that, I don't know, obviously Brent probably, done a lot of recruiting, knows that area really well from being in Clemson. Is that one? I mean, OU has always kind of tried to get into Georgia, and they've had some success here and there, but does Oklahoma becoming a defensive school help them with signing kids in Georgia? Because that seems to be, just historically, am I wrong here that Georgia produces better defensive guys, especially in the interior, than they're known for offensively?
I think that's fair. Georgia is one of those states that I think people for a long time kind of overlooked in some ways because I think it was just always like Florida. Well, you go to Florida, you go find bodies in Florida, and people are like, there's a lot of really good talent. And I think Atlanta, if you talk about metro areas, I don't think there's a more talent-rich area in the country than Atlanta. Like I think they produce guys at every position, and then you look at that year where the top two players in the country were Justin Fields and Trevor Lawrence, both out of Georgia, and I think that kind of woke everybody up in some ways. And so it's, again, I don't want to make it sound like little bitty Georgia nobody knew. Everybody knows there was good talent there, but I think it made people more aware that it's not like 40 good players in Georgia. There's 100, 150 good players in Georgia, so you can go in there and really stockpile. But guys, what's interesting to me, and I don't think I realized it, because when Brent was hired, I was like, man, because I knew how much Clemson had recruited the shit out of Georgia, had obviously recruited Florida a ton. Since Brent has been here, they've landed one player from the state of Georgia, and it's Zion Raggins, a little wide receiver. Like that just blows my mind because they've had a presence, they've tried to. But I'm with you, Kerry. The first real time we're seeing Brent out on the road is in Georgia, Florida. Like he's really hitting some different areas, and I don't know if that was truly planned. I don't know if that's just the way the schedule kind of worked out. I would guess it's more of the latter. But at the same time, I think they know that to kind of keep it going defensively and to keep building what they're doing, they've got to get some more guys out of that area of the country, because I think, to me, they've done better in Texas and some of these areas we're all familiar with than maybe I expected them to, but they haven't crushed it in the Southeast like I kind of thought they might when they brought in Todd Bates and they brought in Brent Venables and they, like all these guys that have a lot of respect in those areas. They haven't quite hit the home runs I kind of thought they would.
All right, so have you seen any visits that kind of surprise you? Like, oh, OU's trying to get in there, or wow, they're really being aggressive. Where I didn't see them trying to get involved with this guy. And do you expect some of those guys at Junior Day that maybe are because we're focusing so much on NIL. I feel like recruiting has kind of been on the back burner so much, but I guess I'm just trying to get an overall gauge for, are they making inroads, in other places?
Well, the perfect setup for that question is a guy that I think they're visiting basically as we speak, and that's Brent Venables and Brandon Hall going to see Markel Ford, the safety from Mesquite Horn, that has been a long-time Texas A&M commitment. Like I said, perfect lead-in with talking about NIL and all those other things that we focus on. We know A&M's taking care of their guys and that kind of stuff, and it's certainly not the Jimbo era, but we know A&M's not afraid to splash around NIL. But Oklahoma, like, Markel Ford's never shut that door on Oklahoma. He's continued to stay in contact. He clearly likes Brandon Hall a lot. And when I talk to sources around that program, it's always like, oh, yeah, he's talking to Oklahoma. He's going to be there at Junior Day this weekend, which, again, is another really good sign when you're getting guys to make that trip on their own, like I always say, on their own dime. I think that's a good indicator of kind of where OU is with him. But that's an interesting one. The Georgia trips, going to see Deuce Gerald's, guys, like everybody, and I mean everybody, is writing off Deuce Gerald's to Ohio State right now. Like, oh, he's going to Ohio State. They just won the national title. They've got Larry Johnson, one of the real dudes in defensive line recruiting. It all makes sense, but Oklahoma's not backed away from that at all. And I think that's pretty interesting.
And Jim Knowles.
If you want to be super conspiracy theorist, I was throwing this around yesterday at the office, Josh. They're in IMG yesterday boarding, obviously Tuesday boarding after the national championship game. Somehow they made their way to Suwanee, Georgia, which is an hour north of Atlanta. I just wonder if there was a chance that, hey, maybe Brent Venables, the defensive staff, might have met Jim Knowles for lunch if he was still around Atlanta. It'd be easy to speculate, easy to, kind of get conspiracy corner on it.
Where do you think they went to lunch?
I don't know. That's a great question. There's a burger spot in Atlanta that I was being told about on Monday that I'm going to have to hit up when we are going out there for what's called SEC Media Day coming up this summer. But I don't know. But if you want to be conspiracy theorist, I would throw that out there that maybe, they went and visited all these guys in Georgia yesterday. Maybe that wasn't even the big fish that they were trying to impress while out there in the Peach State.
Doesn't Gladys Knight have a big?
Eddie, I'm all for it.
And Gladys Knight have a big restaurant? It's real popular.
I have no idea. I bet it's good if she does.
Eddie, do you know who Gladys Knight is?
Yeah, singer.
Okay. There are things, Eddie, where it's just tough for me sometimes to know where we have dated ourselves completely from you and George.
I've sung Midnight Train to Georgia karaoke before.
Okay.
I think Eddie has gotten more cultured over the years than we give him credit for.
I'm very cultured.
George, on the other hand, no. It's not happening yet.
That's okay. I've seen Big Lebowski.
Fact and fact.
That's a huge mark for George. That's a huge win in my book.
It's one of my all-time favorite movies.
I've seen it. I've seen bits and pieces of it to be able to tell you exactly what the whole thing's about.
You need to see the whole thing.
We have someone on the board, Comrade Static, who found out my address and sent it to me, and I hate admitting that I haven't watched it beginning to end.
It's a great movie.
Went through all that trouble.
It's so good. It's so good. In fact, the first night I ever spent in Houston, and this was before I ever met Tiffany, we had been at a bar. We ended up at some people's house that my brother knew, and we were watching Lebowski, and I won't say I finished that movie. Let's put it that way. I was a little out of sorts.
He was baked. He was baked, folks. That's what I think it sounds like.
You know what other classic that I've never seen from beginning to end that people are going to hate me for admitting?
Forrest Gump?
Planes, Trains, and Automobiles.
Oh, come on, man.
Oh, that's a great one.
I know it's a good movie.
I think that's a movie that I've seen. I feel like I've seen the entire thing, but I don't know if I've ever sat down and watched it from beginning to end.
I've seen a lot of it, but I've never sat from beginning to end and watched, which is sad to me because I probably watched Tommy Boy like 700 times from beginning to end.
Tommy Boy's a great movie.
I would say that might be my favorite, like John Candy at like his absolute best.
Is Planes, Trains, and Automobiles?
Yeah, that might be the one for me, and I do. I like Uncle Buck. Like I'm good with John Candy.
I might be more of a Black Sheep guy when we're talking about Chris Farley, but Tommy Boy's
well, it's got the political affiliation with Black Sheep.
Black Sheep's a great movie.
It's not bad, no. But was the one that was it? Was the movie that John Candy was making when he died with like Matthew?
No, you mean Chris Farley.
Oh, that was what Chris Farley died. Okay, yeah. Some terrible,
they were like
Native American,
Westward Expansion Explorers or something. Like if I remember right.
Was it Lewis and Clark or whatever kind of deal?
Basically, I mean, I think that was the basic idea.
What movie was Candy making when he died?
I have no idea. I couldn't tell you.
I don't know. Do you know the sneaky one that I always love of John Candy is Delirious, where he's like the soap opera writer, and like it gets a concussion, and he starts like he ends up in the damn soap opera in his brain. Like it was absurd, but it was fun. It was always funny to me.
This says Wagons East was John Candy's last movie.
Really?
Yeah.
Chris.
And I think that was
no. Yeah,
okay.
Almost
Wagons East
Heroes
was not that
far
movie with Matthew. What's his name that died? It was with
Matthew
Richard
Perry.
Lewis,
Yeah,
John Candy, and Richard Lewis. Wagons East.
R.I.P. Richard Lewis.
Yeah.
Oh, Richard Lewis is great.
All right. Anything else recruiting wise that you wanted to throw out there, Josh?
No, I mean, like I said, just I would tell people like we're starting to pick back up. I know recruiting have been a little slow with all the portal focus and that kind of stuff, but again, we've spent 20, 30 minutes talking about all the visits coaches are making. Offers are going out. I'm about to have a new offer story out where they've made like 7, 8 new offers in the last week, and as I get done writing it, a new offer comes in and I have to kind of add to it. So it'll probably be close to a dozen by the time I'm finally done. But this used to be kind of like a throwaway point in time in recruiting, but this has become one of the more vital periods just because it's one of the times coaches really can just focus on recruiting at this point in the calendar.
Is a part of that, too, the fact that they can go visit 2026 kids now in home?
That is the weirdest thing.
I mean, it's completely
I was talking
changed
to a couple
everything.
coaches about that. Oh, yeah. I mean, like the one I know a lot of people noticed. I mentioned Jaden Warren. Emmett Jones went and did an in-home with him earlier this week. Desmond Green, the big offensive lineman from South Carolina that Bill Bedenbow did an in-home with. If that doesn't give you an idea of how big these kids are, I mean, he made Bill Bedenbow look like a little kid. Yeah. Like, I mean, he is an enormous human being. And so, yeah, I mean, and that's to me one of those things that, like, I knew about and I processed it because when the rules were changed, I think that was in the middle of the summer is when they kicked that in. But there were some other things that, like, were along with it, and I just kind of forgot. And I started seeing all these 2026 guys like taking pictures with coaches clearly in their houses. And you're like, what is happening? And then it was like, oh, yeah. So my old recruiting brain had to catch up a little bit and get used to that being the new norm. And I can tell you several coaches I've talked to, it's the same deal. Like they can't get used to that's all on the up now, and they can do that. You know, they get that one in home with the juniors as well.
By the way, I did not send you the right photo, but did you see that there's a photo floating around of Bill Bedenbow smiling like
oh yeah, big old
massively?
Big old cheesing.
Is that not the one? Is that the one where he's with Chancellor Barclay?
Yeah, but it's his mom. It's on his mom, or I think his mom was the one that tweeted it out because it was just a single picture. I'm putting it in group right now.
It's one of those things that I really enjoy is the a good old fashioned pic of the coach inside the home or inside the high school with the player. I always enjoy that. I break down every one of those pictures that they put out online.
That is just a massive Bill Bedenbow smile.
You don't see it very often.
What I love is he's looking away, like something distracted him. Like that's the only way they caught him.
He didn't realize that they were taking a photo.
Exactly. Like somebody made a joke and he's like, oh, that's funny. And they snapped the picture real quick.
You're going to have to delete that.
I can see him being like, did you take that photo just now? Can you delete that, please?
And Eddie, like we talked about that last summer with the whole Toa Katoa thing. Like he thinks it's so like hilarious and out of place that people think like he doesn't smile. I'm like, you never do, man. Like, I don't know why he's
your
like,
own
really?
former
like,
players make fun of you for it. Like you never smile. Even the ones that really like you and look up to you and love you, like they talk about how you never smile.
So good.
Oh, it's so funny.
All right. Well, congratulations to the men's basketball team for winning an SEC game in fine fashion.
On the board, 82-62.
Double-digit win.
It was nice. We recorded a hoops report with Bob and George talking about the men's and the women's teams, and we'll see. The men's, obviously, it hasn't been a good start to SEC play, but you're able to get on the board with the win, and now that you have the week off, maybe some good mojo going into what is going to be a pretty tough stretch with a pair of road games coming up on Saturday, headed to Fayetteville. Their best player is now out for the season with a hand injury. Arkansas plays Georgia on Tuesday night. I believe they're a 1-point favorite going into that game to try to get their first win in SEC play. And then you go down to Texas A&M and We all know what happened the first time around, blowing the 18-point lead in Norman. So
I was very disturbed by you and Bob's lack of faith in Dayton Forsythe. It's just a
what do you mean?
Guy that plays well at home.
Well, I mean, I think that we're going to have to see it a little bit more.
I
mean,
believe in him already.
He hasn't really shot
I don't know
the
why
ball.
you can't just believe in him.
I believe there's nobody that believes in Dayton Forsythe more than Eddie Radosevich. But to say that he's going to have the same impact on the road, I'd love to see it. It'd be good. It'd be an added bonus because they need that lift of energy that he brought in the middle of that Texas game into the backcourt. So a little bit of toughness too.
We're about a month away from probably having this conversation for real. Maybe not a month, maybe shorter than that. But does Porter Moser have to make the NCAA tournament to keep his job?
I think he does, yes.
I think so too.
I think he does. And, when you drop, that's why you look back at the A&M game, you look back at, them coming out lackadaisical, to use the words that Jalen Moore said against Texas. That's why those losses hurt so much, because you could live with the loss to Georgia, you can live with the loss to Alabama on the road. They're one of the best teams in the country, but you have to be able to find a way to protect home court. And that's why, with the opportunity that they have on Saturday night in Fayetteville, Arkansas is not a very good basketball team. They have a chance to win that. You just got to go do it.
I feel like, just from some of the comments from Porter and in the Hoops Report that's going to be out tonight as well, like, it took too long for Porter to realize, that Jalen Moore needed some prodding to get going. To do things you have to do things for your players to get them. It's just like, scripting plays in a football game. It's like you have your quarterback throw certain passes so he gets comfortable, and they never really run anything through Jalen Moore. It was always Elvis or Miles just driving to the hoop. And look, if you can figure that out, good. But it bothers me that it took so long to kind of admit that. And we'll see what happens. Getting Jeremiah Fears to play at a high level and be comfortable on the floor and to have things that he can do to get the offense going and be a part of it instead of just one guy. Like I said, the open gym stuff just has to stop. They've got to figure out how to run things out there on the court that produce results offensively.
It's crazy to say, and I know it's a lot larger than this, and it's not all on one person, but it is kind of crazy to say Porter Moser's future at Oklahoma kind of depends on Jeremiah Fears.
Yeah, if he becomes the player that he looked like he was going to be after that mission.
Well, he doesn't need to be that good. He doesn't need to be
he doesn't need to be a lottery pick. Good, yeah.
No, but he needs to not turn the ball over. And
I think that's number one.
Yeah,
and it might be obvious, but for the backcourt, they just can't turn the ball over. You turn the ball over 18 times against Texas, led to 30 points for the Longhorns. They turned the ball over, I think, 11 times in the first half against South Carolina. It was a 4-point game at halftime after they made the half-court shot. But you come out in the second half, and it wasn't so much about the contributions that he was making from a point total. It was just taking care of the basketball, giving yourself an opportunity on the offensive end of the court.
And it's almost like they turn people over so much they don't value their own turnovers.
They've done a good job. They've done a good job of, when they've had to ramp up pressure, they've been able to do it. Against some of these veteran backcourts that they're going to face, though, they saw A&M the first time around without Wade Taylor, and the Zurich Phelps kid went off on them. So it's important that they kind of right this ship, build some momentum or whatever that looks like over the next couple of days before they head out to Fayetteville. It's kind of a big game coming up on Saturday night for them.
And then I'm sorry for all of you who had to watch that South Carolina women's game. That was not fun.
Yeah, that was an ass kicking.
Gary, you said it best. That it looked like they were playing two different sports.
Yeah.
And there's
a different sport
the
with different athletes.
Look, OU is going to have problem with the athletic. There is, and George, I've talked about this a lot. There is a tier above everybody else in women's basketball, and there always has been. Even when Caitlin Clark was playing as well as she was, the overall athleticism of that Iowa team wasn't what it was at South Carolina.
No.
And when UConn was going, their overall athleticism was a tier above everybody else in women's college basketball. OU is on that lower tier because they just do not. They have some athletic players, but they don't have the people that just elevate that make the game look like a different sport, like South Carolina does.
There's like 5 teams that can actually win the national title, and I think 3 of them play in the SEC. And it's South Carolina, LSU, and Texas.
Yeah.
And then what? You had USC and UCLA.
UCLA's
or Notre Dame.
UCLA, yeah. Notre Dame's in there. UConn, but after that, and even some of those, I'm like, do I really think they could beat South Carolina?
Like, just look at the results from Monday and the Martin Luther King thing that they had up in New Jersey. Texas played Maryland, who's ranked number 8, and granted, college basketball, you have bad nights. It looked like a mismatch. Madison Booker and what she did, I think she had 27 with 15 in the first half. It was just a simple mismatch of athlete.
Yeah, and I think that's not to say that the women's basketball team is not good. Like, I still think this is Jenny Bronchek's best team, and this is a team that can make the Sweet 16. They could host a regional. I fully believe that. It's just they're not at the South Carolina level. And when Peyton Verhulst only scored 3 points, she had a career night just a few nights before that against Missouri with 38. You're just not going to win many games. And then Sahara Williams, who I think is super athletic and probably Oklahoma's most
physical,
athletic player.
Yeah.
She's 0 for 8 in the game. And that's partly because she didn't play well, and that's partly because South Carolina just forces you into some incredibly difficult shots. And really the only girl that played – they had 2 girls play well. Skylar Vann, who had 13. That was a nice performance. And then Reagan Beers, Reagan Beers is one of the best players in the country. When she plays like she did on Saturday, she had 23 and 8. So
and she was banged up too, wasn't she?
Yeah. So I don't think this is like, I mean, it's embarrassing to lose by 41, but I still think the same I felt about this Oklahoma basketball team beforehand, which is they can get to the Sweet 16.
It's crazy because, like, I thought Tennessee looked unbeatable on the men's side, and then they've had some really bad losses lately, and they've fallen down to 6th in the country, and they just don't seem as dominant. But you're seeing
they're going to be okay.
They're going to be okay.
I think they're going to be okay.
But it's that thing, like, you can get your head kicked in on any night on the men's and the women's side.
Well, I mean, South Carolina, to be fair, did lose to UCLA earlier this season.
Yeah, right.
And I do think I think they had one of their players was out in that game, but UCLA's legit.
I'll say this with Jenny's style, like, she is going to run up tempo even if it's to her detriment, which it was against South Carolina. I mean, it was the only way that if you really wanted to win that game, the only way was to take the air out of the ball in that game. But old man moment here on the pod. Here you go. I grew up watching the Billy Tubbs era. And early on, like, he still did that running up the court, up and down, no matter who was playing, but he finally got the athletes to go up against UNLV and everybody else. And, like, until Jenny gets the athletes that are somewhat like what South Carolina and LSU are getting, they're going to have those nights where they just get run off the floor.
And they just don't know how to play any other way. Like,
and they shouldn't probably. I mean,
no.
Billy Tubbs never knew how to play any other way. And, unfortunately, he never won the national championship. He got really close, but he stuck to his guns, and I think that's what Jenny's going to do.
I think so too.
And she's in on the Aaliyah Chavez, right? The number 1 player in the country. Like, that's somebody. So. Those are the types of women that you're going to need to get if you really want to take that next step into the tier that we're talking about, that upper echelon.
And to Jenny's credit, she's won a lot of basketball games playing that way.
Sure.
That doesn't mean if they get to the NCAA tournament and let's say they meet South Carolina in the Sweet 16, do you change up your game plan and play a different way? I don't know. I don't think she will, but you might.
It would be
have
hard
to
change who you are overnight.
Sure. And I think to give them the best opportunity, it's probably playing how you.
Well,
how
look,
you
and
play.
if they would have played at a higher level and played it better, which South Carolina is just a tough team to play it against, but say Peyton Verhulst does score 20 in that game, it's a totally different game.
Sure, and
they got down 28-9.
That's what I was going to say. It was by the time you turned on the television, get over from the NFC Championship game, it's like, oh, okay.
I go back to football
this
now.
Is I'm click back over. We did kind of cover it up, but you were at the game on last Thursday. Peyton Verhulst and what she did against Missouri, unbelievable.
38 points, career high, 5th most in program history in a game.
20 points in the third quarter, and she had 15 in the first 5 minutes.
She scored like 13 in a row.
That's crazy.
At one point. Like, it was unbelievable.
Did you realize it? Like, as it was going on, like, holy shit.
I kind of was like, man, she's on fire.
Because I had it on with another game, and I didn't even realize until the end that I was like, oh my God, I did not realize.
I knew she had been hitting a bunch of shots, but the Thunder were playing at the same time.
Right.
And
that
they
was
were playing
the night of the Cavs game.
The Cavs game. And so I was like multitasking, watching both, and I think it was Ryan Chapman who was sitting next to me. He's like, I think Peyton Verhulst just scored 13 straight points in 5 minutes.
I was wondering why you put SGA in the gamer that you wrote. You just got your wires transferred.
Speaking of which, the Thunder are just freaking awesome.
They're the best. They're the best.
Oklahoma City needs a beatdown of Dallas this week. It needs to happen.
It just sucks that they're getting to begin on the second night of a back-to-back like they did last week.
But, I mean, the Jazz aren't going to put up a fight tonight.
No. You
they could rest. They're going to be able to rest.
We were going over the injury report for Utah, and they are in full-fledged
they're
tank
tanking.
mode.
Yeah.
It's kind of beautiful. You know who's playing a lot for Utah? I didn't even realize.
Oh, this is interesting.
Connections to Oklahoma.
That's what I'm thinking. Man. I don't know who it is.
Elijah Harkless is
Really?
playing for the Utah
Really?
Jazz.
Wow.
I had no idea. And he played like he made his NBA debut, I think, like
Good
a week
for
ago.
him.
Is he on a two-way contract?
I think so, yes. I think so.
He was a good player for OU.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, he's on a two-way with the Salt Lake City Stars, the NBA G League team. So if you go to the Paycom Center on Wednesday night, maybe you'll see some Elijah Harkless. He played 10 minutes, had 2 points, an assist, and 2 rebounds when they blew the 25-point lead on Monday night to New Orleans.
That's just a name that reminds me of how long Oklahoma's been struggling with the unlimited transfers.
Oh, yeah. He was part of that first wave because he was with Kruger, then got held over for a year and then transferred out. But he's a fantastic basketball player.
Yeah, I really enjoyed
had a good
watching
career
him play.
at UNLV, and now he's playing in the majors.
That's cool. Good for him. Get to see him tonight then. All right, Jim Knowles' watch continues. We will continue to be on it. We'll say we've got some workers coming in on the new studio today, so we got some progress going there. Should have some new set pieces coming in here before the start of spring practice, which is exciting. So who knows? Maybe maybe the U40 will be on video soon. Which I'm going to get.
You got to stop teasing people.
I'm going to get killed in the comments for that. I know.
As long as we're recorded, baby, it doesn't matter what we're doing.
Cramp! Oh, damn it.
Oh no, Kerry's having a cramp and he's about to die here. We're about to actually see him. I think he's going to the floor. He is now going to the floor. Ladies and gentlemen, we appreciate the listenership. We're going to go 10 to Kerry. Josh is laughing because he can't see it. It would be excellent video. It's a hamstring cramp. He's obviously not drinking enough water, low on sodium, whatever helps you not cramp. George, go get him a banana. Go get him a banana.
I do have a banana.
I had an orange juice
He needs
and an apple before the show.
I wondered why you smoked like alcohol. You were drinking a screwdriver earlier. I think this is a good point to end it. Josh, have a good week.
Thank you for listening.
Hopefully you will dig out of the malaise that is the snowstorm in Houston, which is now just a bunch of wet, dirty nastiness, I'm sure. I love snow, but after about a day, I'm like, okay, I'm ready to get back to the normalcy of clean cars, not a bunch of dirt all over the place, all that kind of stuff.
I forgot to clean my car before it went into the teens.
It's
just gross.
Frigid in the mornings around these parts, but that's okay. As I keep telling myself, it's into January. It's supposed to be cold.
Thank you. I appreciate the banana, George. It's amazing you just pulled a banana out of your ass.
I brought one for lunch.
That would have been a real pause moment if he did that.
All right, Josh, I'm glad you got to experience that on camera and nobody else did.
That's why we don't do it on camera.
Wow, that was a shocking amount of cramp. I did not hit the morning.
I thought you were having a heart attack for a second.
I mean, I'm fat. But
Was that a hamstring?
Yeah, hamstring.
I don't think I've ever had a hamstring cramp.
Really?
No, calf. I get calves all the time.
I can see that. You have giant calves.
Yeah, never hamstrings.
It's just you get to a certain age and everything starts cramping. I need to have mustard packets laying around. Apparently that helps a lot.
I would.
No, I didn't. I didn't get to go through my.
I
I didn't go through my morning hydration routine, so I'm paying for it. So, all right, that's going to do it. I appreciate everybody listening. As we said, stay tuned to Soonerscoop.com. We're not going to tease you with a bunch of bullshit. We'll just tell you what goes down when it goes down in regards to Jim Knowles. So thanks for listening. We'll see you back here next week for another edition of the Unofficial 40 podcast right here on Soonerscoop.com.